I Hate Politics is a podcast about a human activity we love to hate. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. Frederick is Maryland's fastest growing county. A reflection of both rapidly rising home values to its south in Montgomery and reduced commuting due to growing work from home. But even as the county has grown dramatically, it has kept up a policy of preserving agricultural land. A policy that is backed by the state of Maryland and by the federal government. The purpose of land preservation policies are twofold: to prevent sprawl and to encourage farm-to-table agriculture. Sprawl prevention can be expensive. Buying development rights to land when land value is going up and up is costly. But once development rights have been separated from land, however, there is still the matter of making agriculture viable. In effect, we see two levels of government intervention at play. I talked with Frederick County Land Preservation Program Manager Ann Bradley and Ag Business Workforce Development Director Katie Stevens about how they were seeing things. I Hate Politics is a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools and streets, and our local governments as they function in diverse and democratic societies. This means our politics are messy, dirty, sometimes corrupt, with often self-serving politicians. But no matter how much we hate politics, we are never exempt from it, even when we refuse to participate. In fact, the purpose of politics is to keep society moving precisely when we don't agree with each other, like now. Music for this episode comes from Jackie and the Treehorns, an Alexandria, Virginia-based alt-rock band. Steve Rubin and Pam Long on vocals, guitars, and piano. Frank Caputo on bass, and Brian Gibson on the drums. Their latest album, Go Get Your Ghosts, was released in 2023 and is available on their website, JackieandTheTreehorns.com.
And I like what I see. There's a good chance I won't be coming back. The mermaids are all that's left for me.
In the news this week, Maryland opened its Workforce Shortage Student Assistance Grant Program, where the state's public university students pursuing majors such as child development, teaching, nursing, occupational therapy, social work will receive between $1,000 and $4,000 a year, depending on whether they are going to a 4-year or a 2-year college, and the number of credits they are taking. High-demand majors have long been elevated with support like this. But interestingly, this grant includes law and public service fields, which presumably includes the study of political science. There are post-graduation service requirements, a year for a year of support with designated employers. Prince George's County is considering a 2-year ban on new townhomes outside designated transit and activity centers in the county. Supporters argue that there are too many townhomes in the county, Generally, townhomes tend to be cheaper than single-family homes in the same location. And home prices in the county and the region have risen dramatically during and after the pandemic. Prince George's County Executive Angela Alsobrooks' office has opposed the law, calling it detrimental to housing affordability. Townhouses are often starter homes for young families. There has also been criticism of the law by developers whose current projects might be affected. WJLA.com identified the project at Freeway Airport in Bowie and the project at the intersection of Maryland routes 450 and 193 as those that are affected. Lawyers for those developers have openly criticized the county council's effort to ban townhomes. After the bizarre manhunt and death of former Larry Hogan aide Roy McGrath, federal authorities are now accusing Frederick County's longtime elected Republican sheriff Chuck Jenkins of helping a local gun range owner, Robert Kropp, buy military-grade machine guns, which Kropp then rented out at his gun range, making more than $100,000 from this business. Federal authorities say Sheriff Jenkins wrote letters to machine gun manufacturers saying that his department was considering the purchase of guns through Kropp's business, and Kropp was ordering the guns for his departmental review. Jenkins provided justification for Kropp buying heavy-duty machine guns ordinarily not available to civilians. And then, of course, he rented the guns out. Worth noting that the sheriff's offices in Maryland counties, including Frederick, does not run the police department, but rather runs county jails and correction facilities. Both Jenkins and Robert Kropp have pleaded not guilty. Sheriff Jenkins is well known in the region for his anti-immigrant views and has been in spats with Montgomery County officials over the county's protective laws toward immigrants. For several years now, the Maryland 529 plan has been troubled. Now Governor Moore has signed a bill into law that will dissolve the college fund's independent board of directors and bring the fund under the control of Maryland State Treasurer Derek Davis. The 529 fund runs two types of college savings plan. A tuition prepayment plan where families buy credits ahead of time, and the other more common market fund which can be used anywhere. The problems appear to be largely on the prepaid side of the house. A 2019 audit of the fund reported that the fund did not properly distribute its earnings. In 2021, the trust told account holders that they would earn 6% on existing balances. Several officials from the fund confirmed this. But in 2022, the board of directors of the fund reported that there had been a calculation error and some account holders had been incorrectly credited with large sums. And where this was the case, these balances were reduced accordingly. The new legislation allows the state's treasurer to set a new rate of return for the account holders. And his office has said that they will work through the issues to make sure families can pay tuition in the fall. I'll be back with Frederick County officials Ann Bradley, the Land Preservation Program Manager for the county, and Katie Stevens, the Ag Business Workforce Development Director. You're listening to I Hate Politics. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. Ann Bradley, Katie Stevens, welcome to I Hate Politics.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with some basics. What are the 2 or 3 most important things you do for agricultural land preservation in Frederick? Maybe Ann start with that.
There's quite a few programs available. Maryland is a national leader in these programs, and we have started preserving land. In this county, the first preservation agreement took place in about 1978. So it's been several decades that we've been participating in these programs. We have county programs that are run entirely by Frederick County and created by us. We have programs that we partner with the Maryland Department of Agriculture, the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation program. We have a program we partner with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, a program called the Rural Legacy Program. We also have another Department of Natural Resources program called the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. There are probably about 6+ programs that we market to people, and those are kind of a snapshot of a few of them.
Okay. Katie, so you are working on marketing and sustainability as best as I can tell. So, there is this question of making direct-to-consumer agriculture viable, right? So tell me a little bit about why you think that requires government help to be viable.
So it's not about needing help to be viable, but it's needing assistance to go through the regulatory process. Because a lot of times when you're selling direct to consumer, you're adding value to it. So you may have to go through the health department for approvals. Even sometimes it's, state approval to sell your value added products. If you want to have a farm stand on your farm, that requires, local zoning approval and potentially permitting for the building as well. And so we're kind of here to hold people's hands as they go through that process and explain it so that we ensure people are doing it correctly.
And so what is the marquee program what is your biggest program? How many dollars does it have? How many acres do you do? What is the deal?
It's a good question. Lately, our largest program within the last probably few years preserving land is the county's Frederick County Installment Purchase Program, or IPP as we call it. It's the county's farmland preservation program. I think we've been making the most offers over the past several years in that program because it's tied to a local dedicated revenue. So I believe we made somewhere in the range of 14 to 18 offers in that program last year.
And total dollar value?
Well, my entire budget for all programs for this fiscal year is about $33 million. And a majority of that is dedicated toward that program.
Okay. So what does that program do? Can you break it down? Like, what is it?
Mm-hmm. It is a voluntary program that landowners can apply to if they meet certain criteria to permanently preserve their farm. If they apply, we put them in a ranking order based on an adopted system that, gives priority to farms that have aspects that we feel are more important than others, higher soil quality, larger size. And then we make offers, and landowners have a time frame to accept or reject our offer. And if they accept, we have a real estate settlement where they agree to permanently preserve their land by means of a legal deed restriction that we record in the land records over top of the property. And we agree to a payment. So we pay them to extinguish development potential that could have happened on the farm. So we pay for the development rights and we extinguish them.
So this is like a new version of the TDRs, the transfer development rights sort of things that you used to do in the 80s and 90s, right?
It is kind of a companion to TDR, transfer of development rights. We call them PDRs, purchase of development rights. So they have been around just as long, and it's just a different mechanism to pay for these types of agreements, whereas TDRs use private money. These actually use public funding to preserve land.
You said you have a dedicated funding line, a revenue line. What is that?
We have an ordinance that allocates agricultural land preservation programs 25% of local recordation tax revenue. So when a deed is recorded in the land records in Frederick County, we are allocated 1/4 of that.
Well, you must be flush now.
We had a good few years with the real estate transfers we've seen. Yes.
You said that you prefer larger farms, larger properties over smaller ones. What is the logic of that?
Because typically larger properties have more development potential. Also, agricultural operators want to be able to operate large contiguous tracts. That's kind of the method for our current agricultural operations. So our elected officials and boards felt that the larger the farm, they should receive more priority.
Okay. So, Katie, if you are preserving large contiguous lands, okay, and that is your primary mode of agriculture, I assume mechanization by that, then what does it mean for the community supported agriculture, direct to consumer agriculture that you are trying to promote?
Yeah, so we work to support in our office, we're supporting all types of agriculture. And while Ann mentioned some programs that she's working with that kind of prioritize the larger chunks of land, there is some other programs out there that can support some smaller chunks of land, some other state programs that can support that. Because we do want to support all farmers here in Frederick. And we're seeing a lot of new agriculture come in that are smaller chunks of land. There's growing vegetables or growing flowers, and they may only be on 10 acres of land, or, a craft beverage business coming in and they're going to grow the hops that they're going to make their beer, but they only need a 30-acre plot of land because of how their business is modeled. And so it's just that looking at traditional agriculture versus some of this diversification, but we're here to support all types of agriculture.
That's interesting. Is there actually a brewery in Frederick that grows its own hops?
Yeah, there is. So,
which one?
Milk House Brewery, they grow their own hops. So they're out in Mount Airy. And so one of the cool things about the craft beverage community here in Frederick that is located on farm, our zoning requires that they grow 51% of their product that's going in. And so that could be hops for the breweries. So we have a couple. So Milk House Brewery is one, as well as Prospect Point. They're a new brewery. They have about 10 acres in hops productions. So they're one of the largest in the state. So yeah, it's very interesting. And there is a new hop that is genetically unique to Frederick County that was found on.
How is that?
Yeah, so it was found on a farm here in Frederick County up in Kemar. He's a retired state vet. So he found this hop that he's been trying to kill for years. And he happened to run into and connect with the owner of Milk House Brewery, Tom Bars. And so Tom went and they started doing some research on this hop. And they partnered with the University of Maryland, Maryland Department of Agriculture, and Grow and Fortify now, as well as USDA. And they found that after doing some testing that this hop is genetically unique to Frederick County. Hops can be challenging to grow in Maryland because of our climate. But this hop thrived. Last summer was the first year of like a larger production of it, and they just released 3 beers with it. Milkhouse Brewery did, and they were really good. So that was always, that's always the concern. You find a new hop, how's it going to taste in beer? But it did really well. And so they're doing more testing on this, but it's genetically unique to Frederick. It's called the Monocacy hop.
Monocacy hop. Wow,
Yeah,
that's like an episode all in itself.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's a really cool project.
Okay, I'm gonna follow that up. Now, and maybe you can speak to the programs that are meant for small farmers.
Absolutely.
Because, before I say that, I want to say also that the point of all of this, right, is to move agriculture to a different place, right? So agriculture in this region, whether it's Frederick or Montgomery, or even the larger area, is largely sort of industrial agriculture. And we have been wanting to move it unsuccessfully, I think. For example, in Montgomery, the CSAs, the community supported agriculture, is really small in terms of dollar value, right? I'm going to go back and ask you about how big that is in Frederick, but still, so that's the kind of the assumption behind that question is, what do you do to actually make that shift happen?
Okay, that's a good question. I mean, we do, most of the programs, not most, but quite a few have a criteria of a minimum of 50 acres to apply. Unless you're adjoining a preservation block, then they'll accept applications on less than 50. We do have properties smaller than 50 acres going into the programs. We have one specific program that was created by the state of Maryland, the Marbidco Small Acreage Next Generation Program. This is a pretty unique program. It is targeted to properties between 10 and 50 acres, and it actually helps a agricultural operator purchase a property that size to begin an operation. So that program is about 2 years old, and Marbidco stands for the Maryland Agricultural Resource-Based Industry Development Corporation. It's an arm of the state. So we partner with them, and we market that program here locally to assist with those kind of smaller farm transfers. And that is something that we kind of lacked in the past, but it's kind of filled this gap to try to help people buy farms that are smaller in size.
How does that work, actually? That's a very interesting program, because one of the biggest problems with farming or bringing new people to farming is that new people that come to farming don't have the land. So if you are helping, sort of people from cities move out and actually acquire or have access to land, how does that actually work?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have actually 3 programs that facilitate transfers. So if somebody has a contract of sale and meets some criteria, they can apply to these programs, and there can be funding at the settlement table for that next person to purchase that farm. They're also agreeing to some preservation agreements too with that, but we can actually have funding at settlement to facilitate that transfer.
How much funding?
It depends on the program. Some of them, like the next generation, they may pay about 40% of fair market value based on appraisals that they purchased. The other 2 programs are geared towards larger properties, and that can be up to 50% of fair market value to help landowners purchase the farms.
Now, with property prices, land prices really, shooting up in Frederick County in the last several years now, how have your programs actually grown in dollar value? So it's now 33 million, right? What is the what is the growth pattern?
Well, our funding increase mainly 33 million is a large amount for our budget, because maybe a few years ago it was down around 15 million, 17 million. The increase is because of a recordation tax rate increase that we received in around 2020. So that's why we reached that $33,000 range, $33 million range. I'm sorry, excuse me. But even with such a robust budget, and it's still such that we do not make all applicants that apply offers. We have way more applicants than funding for typical program cycles. So we are helping them, and they are doing really great things, but there's still not every single person that always applies is able to achieve an offer because of funding.
Well, you don't want every single person to be able to get it because not everybody will be eligible, right? So, but what would it take for you to meet all the truly eligible applicant pool? What is that number?
More than 33 million.
But have you thought through? Is it 70 million? Is it 100 million? Do you know?
It could be 33 million for just one program. Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Katie, let's talk a little bit about the place of direct-to-consumer agriculture in the region. I mean, how has it been growing? How is it doing in Frederick in comparison to, say, Montgomery or Carroll, or, pick your comparison point?
Yeah. So during the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020, we saw a skyrocketing of the need for to buy from local farms. People, they were going to the grocery store and they couldn't find what they were looking for. They couldn't find the meat or the vegetables. And so they started to build connections with our local farm community, and the farmers stepped up to fill that void. And we've continued to see that growth since the COVID pandemic. And we're trying to continue to support that. Frederick has one of the highest amounts of farms that sell direct to consumer in the state. And we're working to support that through our homegrown Frederick brand, which is all about sharing with consumers farms that are selling locally, so that if a consumer is looking for a farm that sells beef here in the county, they can go on our website and they can search for local products. So we're trying to make it easy for consumers to find farms in their region of the county where they can find these products through both a website, social media, and a yearly print publication, really about supporting agriculture.
Okay, so how much of the agricultural production in terms of dollar value comes from direct to consumer in Frederick?
I do not know that answer.
In Montgomery, it's actually quite low. It's less than 1%.
Yeah, it's still not the highest number. I wouldn't, expect it to be, a large portion, but it has grown significantly from 2017 to today. And we really don't have good data on today right now. We just know from word of mouth and talking with farmers and meeting with them. So ag data is every 5 years. We have the U.S. Census of Agriculture. So right now we're still utilizing, if we want true data, we're going off of 2017. Well, the 2022 census we'll have at the end of this year. And so we'll have a better understanding of what that actual dollar value is on how much it's grown.
You said the meat processing industry in Frederick is really booked up. Is that the primary growth area? Or is it is it dairy, meat, or is it vegetables? Where is the growth?
I think it's in a couple of different places. So value-added agriculture as a whole has kind of grown. And so when we're talking value-added, we're taking something that's grown on your farm or produced on your farm, and you're changing that form so you can get a higher dollar. So, you're raising a beef cow, and then you're going to, instead of putting it into the market, you're going to take it to a processor who's going to allow you then to be able to bring it back to the farm and sell it by the cut. So you can sell a pound of hamburger or, a pack of T-bone steaks. So that's increasing the value. Same with dairy, people are looking at new ways how they can sell their dairy products. So that's selling cheese or ice cream or milk they process on their farm. We include the craft beverage industry on that, growing products on your farm that you're going to then sell. And we've seen continued growth in that. And I think even in the vegetable market, we've seen continued growth. So I think across the board in value-added agriculture, we've seen growth.
Okay. Have you been gearing up to deal with the marijuana laws and that's coming up. What are you doing in that respect?
No, we have not been yet.
Are you thinking about it? What do you think is going to happen?
I don't have a good grasp on that yet. I haven't read the full legislation, but I don't have a good answer on that one.
Okay. According to some consultant that the Maryland government had been using, we need to grow 2 million plants every year in order to meet current demand, and that too actually just about 50% of current demand. That's a lot of plants. That's a lot of grow houses. And you can't grow them outside. You have to grow them inside.
Yeah, so right now the county ordinance or the county zoning says that medical cannabis cannot be grown on a farm. So it would take, the county council or county executive putting forward legislation to change that. That was put in a couple of years ago that did not allow it on farm. But
what do you mean on farm? On farm is different from inside a grow house? Is that the distinction, inside, outside?
So what we found is people have used more like warehouse type buildings to grow it. That's how the rules are written right now. So on any agriculture zone property, you are not allowed to grow medical cannabis. And it's called medical cannabis right now. That's currently how the definition reads. And so it would take the county council or county executive bringing forward legislation to change that.
It's the July 1st. It's really around the corner. So I would imagine that there is considerable business interest in it. There's considerable farming interest in it. So why are you not interested?
I do not have a position on it.
No, I'm not asking for a position. I'm just asking for what equities there are, right? What should we be thinking about?
Yeah, it's definitely something that, conversations need to take place because we know where our current law sits. But I don't know the opinion, of our elected officials, and it has to come from them.
And what is the total acreage that has been protected in Frederick County?
We're at around 71,000, and they're privately owned properties where landowners had voluntarily preserved their properties.
Have you had a case where somebody, having gone through the program, folks go, okay, no, I don't want to participate anymore. Here is the money back. Can I go back to what it used to be?
That is not an option. The next owner purchases the property, and properties have transitioned ownership. But the next person purchases the property, and the title report reveals that property is in agricultural land preservation in perpetuity, and they take the property subject to that restriction in place.
So 71,000 acres is a lot. How far can you go? Potentially in terms of how far could the programs go?
Based on data we have, we believe there's over 200,000 acres in the county in agricultural use. It's been a long-term goal since, I think, the 1998 Comprehensive Land Use Plan to preserve a minimum of 100,000 acres. However, it sounds like based on some of the new county executives' transition initiatives, they could be increasing that goal. And I've heard of possibly looking at the number 160,000 acres.
Is there a deadline, target date for that, possibly like in 4 years of her term?
The original goal for 100,000 was by 2020. However, we haven't met that. Although 71,000 is pretty good, but no, I have not heard a timeline for the new potential increasing goal. Not yet. That is something to be worked out.
Why do you think you didn't meet the 100,000 acre goal? What do you think were the shortcomings?
It's not due to lack of interest. I have, over 100 applications to all of the programs every year. It would be because we didn't have enough funding that cycle to make everyone offer. So I have tons of interest, but it's the funding that really drives how many acres I preserve each year.
If I wanted to rent ag land in Frederick, what is the going rate?
That's something I would ask the Farm Service Agency for the land rents. I don't have up-to-date numbers on that right now.
So, for example, in Montgomery County, I know that you can rent for as little as $50 an acre a year. And the best rate, the absolute best rate is probably 140.
Yeah, I'd say we have even a bigger range here in Frederick because we have so many different types of soils. So we have clay soils up in the north, and we have some of our best farmland here outside the city. And so it kind of depends where you're at in the county. And I think we would go I think there would be some down in that $50, and I think they go as high as 300, and they might even be higher than 300.
Really? For what use?
For production agriculture, for corn, soybeans, wheat.
That's fascinating, because what I have heard from farm owners in Montgomery County is that the amount of money they make almost never even covers the taxes.
Yeah, the rent money, yeah.
So how is it viable?
I think that dollar amount really depends on the quality of the soil and what you want to do with it. Pasture land is obviously much cheaper than land where you're going to grow a really high quality crop. And so farmers are really analyzing soil samples and all of that before determining what that rate is, to make an educated guess on that, on what they can offer based on, what their projected yields are, looking at what are they going to put on the land, what are they going to plant, as well as what is the soil.
But you are saying that almost all cultivable land in Frederick County is actually cultivated as a result. It's not that, low prices means that it's
no,
not.
There's definitely some land that's not. I would never say that there's not, that all of our land is cultivated. That could be. There will always be some, whether it's land that's just not really high quality soils, or the person just isn't interested in that.
And the evidence to me is that almost all farming families have one person that works in the schools or the government or the police or something.
Yeah, we have a lot of people that, one spouse or one person in the family definitely works off the farm in something, just trying to support, the farm. When you're selling, corn, soybeans, commodity crops, you're seeing up and down waves. There's no control. That price is not decided by the farmer. And so that's why, farmers have tried to diversify. And a lot of them just have somebody working off the farm just so that they can support that, those waves.
In most cases, I have found that farmers themselves are not even cultivating. Farmers, the farm owners, are renting out to large corporations that have the capital to do the farming, right? So they have mechanized machines that, do a lot of the work. Otherwise, at a small scale, even if it's, 50 or 100 acres, it's not viable. Only when you go to, 500 or 1,000 acres does that scale of farming become viable.
I wouldn't agree. I would disagree on the corporation. I think these are still family farms that we see here in Frederick that have grown over the years, so that they continue to support another generation coming back to the farm or another family member working on the farm full time. I do think we have farms that are, 100 acres or 50 acres that are being very successful.
But they are being farmed by the owner, or are they being farmed by somebody that rents?
By the owner. They're being farmed by the owner.
Okay.
And they're being quite successful because they look at what can we grow that increases our bottom line? Like, what is our best bang for the buck? And so, that's what we're always telling people. Like, you got to evaluate your land. You got to find what is the best use of that property. But I would say, our farms are getting farmed by family farms. Even some of these larger, farming 500 acres, they're still family operations that are here in Frederick County. But, as their family has grown, another generation's coming back or another family member's coming back, they've had to increase their acreage to support that person coming back.
And that acreage is, you're saying that's what the demand for acreage is, people coming back.
Yeah, I think, people are trying to grow, their business. They say, hey, we got a little time left. We can add more to our, portfolio of land that we're farming.
Katie Stevens and Bradley, thank you for coming on I Hate Politics.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You escape what you fear if you hold on to what's dear. And when you breathe your last breath, then you come out on the other side.
That was Frederick County officials Ann Bradley and Katie Stevens. You're listening to I Hate Politics. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. What lessons can we draw from my conversation with Bradley and Stevens? Agricultural land preservation against the threat of sprawl has been a long-standing policy in Frederick, in Maryland, and across the United States. Frederick started in 1978. In 1980, Montgomery County created its agricultural reserve, founded roughly on similar principles of finding a way for landowners to gain financial benefit from not developing the land, similar to what they might get if they had in fact built. Interestingly, Frederick ran a publicly funded program financed through property recordation or transfer taxes. Montgomery ran a private program where landowners could sell development rights to developers to build elsewhere in the county. A lot of the early development in Germantown and Boyd's became possible because of the transfer of development rights out of the ag reserve. In Montgomery County, all the transfer rights have now been exhausted. It is a measure of the upward pressure on land prices that Frederick was not able to meet its 100,000 acre goal. High land prices means that landowners want the government to pay more to extinguish development rights. Ann Bradley thinks that she could use up all the money she could get. But keep in mind that her offer to buy more itself would put more pressure on prices. It is one thing to buy out development rights, but another matter to make agriculture on that land viable. Taxes still need to be paid. How to make farms viable is Katie Stevens' job. And here, the challenge has been even greater. The big hope is farm-to-table agriculture, value-added products such as organic meat production or flowers, or a brewery that uses local produce. The agriculture census will come out later this year in 2023, and we'll get more definitive numbers at that time. There is great excitement around the idea of farm to table, but based on land rents, growth in this sector appears to be limited. Frederick's agricultural land area is bigger than Montgomery's, and there is more variation in soil quality and hence greater variation in land rents. But the bulk of agriculture in the entire region remains mechanized and dependent on imported rather than local labor. There are two levels of government intervention in agriculture. First, to pay money to keep land under farming and not from being developed, and then to support farm production itself. Agriculture, if it is to exist, and if it is to exist as local and organic, is going to have to be subsidized. Farming is hard work and few want to do it, but if you are intent on it, it is possible that the state and the county could help you get into it. That's all for this episode. You've been listening to I Hate Politics. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. Music for this episode comes from Jackie and the Treehorns, Steve Rubin and Pam Long on vocals, guitars, and piano, Frank Caputo on bass, and Brian Gibson on the drums. Their latest album is called Go Get Your Ghosts and can be found on their website, JackieandTheTreehorns.com. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone else who might want to, please sign up for updates at our brand new website, ihppod.org, or email us at producer@ihppod.org. I hope you will subscribe and share the podcast as we bring you stories about politics close to you and to your home. See you next time.
Party rat in a sanitary trap. I'm not quite sure how they're gonna feel about that. Ain't got no patience, they ain't got no relief. Ain't got no money, they ain't got no beliefs. They can't win for losing. They gotta keep moving. Give it some time and I'll be front page news. I tell you what, I've got nothing more to lose. I might be too much for you to explain. My own persistence ends in mortal remains.